All right, everybody. Hello and welcome. It is Thursday, August the 6th. I hope you are having a toasty summer wherever you may be, especially if you're above the equator. If you're below the equator, then it's winter. You are here today for how to build an eBay reselling side hustle with AI in one weekend. My name is Albert. I'm the founder of Albert's List for a job search, side hustle, and AI education company, helping you become the most resilient professional possible. And in these uncertain economic and inflated times, you need all the certainty you can get. And you need really all the options that you can get to make more money so you can fight back against inflation, make extra income, and make those ends meet. I think that's a story of a lot of people as we go through this current economy, whether you're here in the United States or you're dialing in from elsewhere. For all of you who have also just signed up for this webinar, you no doubt also know that eBay and really reselling items has become this really hot trend. I think I see at least 5 or 6 different videos from Gary Vaynerchuk every day saying that if you want to make your first $1,000, go find something, flip it on eBay, or go flip it on Craigslist or, any number of sites that exist out there. And, the question I always have is how easy is that really? So to dispel that myth today and talk about how you can use AI to make it happen and make some of that income, I'm bringing in my friend Charles Costa. He's the creator of ResellingGuide.ai, FoundMoneyReselling.com, and a content strategist at eBay itself. eBay has greenlit this webinar, so you can say that we have been given approval to do this. And so he's going to talk about what it means to build that eBay reselling side hustle. It's Thursday. You can get started right after the webinar and have a fully functioning business by Monday. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll address them when we can. And this webinar will also be recorded, and so we'll follow up accordingly as after this webinar here today, and send you the recording, and you can ask any questions that you may have. Without further ado, Charles, thank you so much for coming back, and over to you.
Great. Thank you, Albert, for the introduction. And thank you, everyone who is attending the webinar. Albert provided a pretty great intro about me. I don't want to make this about me, and there is a bit of information to cover. But at a very high level, I've been at eBay since March of 2020, and I've been reselling primarily on eBay. I also sell on Poshmark, Mercari, have done Facebook Marketplace and Depop in the past. And most of what I sell is clothing and accessories from estate sales, thrift stores, and flea markets. Before we get into the details all of the lesson, I have a quick disclaimer I need to show. The full version is on the screen. The very short summary is that Reselling Guide AI, FoundMoneyReselling.com, and this webinar, all the associated material. It's an independent project and it's not affiliated or endorsed by eBay. I did get clearance to do this presentation education, but it's not at all reflective of any company strategy. So moving on, the whole lesson is centered on taking something you have in your house, or maybe even if you do want to go out and buy something to flip it. We're focusing on how to get that first item up and running so you can then build momentum. Because ultimately, when I started reselling myself, it was a bit daunting, but once I started, I just created that first listing, you eventually find a groove on what works for you, and then you're able to really hit momentum. And today, I currently have about 950 shirts, belts, and pants, things of that sort, listed on eBay and other platforms. So, all that in mind, I want to take a minute and ask, what is something that you have around the house or something you've thought of flipping? And I just want to have it dropped in the chat. So it can be like clothing. I saw motor parts before. Whatever it is, feel free to drop it in the chat. I see Nike shoes, definitely very popular, tennis rackets. I did sell a vintage badminton racket a few years back early on. A chariot made out of bone, shoes, clothes, lots of toys and plush. Disney merch, definitely Disney is very popular. Comic books, designer watch, Dooney Burke, all great stuff. This is perfect. And it's really helping me to get a feel for get a feel for what will relate the most. Sold my key fobs to my 2017 Camry. That's definitely great. Yes, eBay, I've found obscure parts, and that's one of my favorite things about eBay, especially the motors. Just being able to buy something for my 2016 Corolla and not having to go to the dealer is amazing. So now that we have I see a lot of the chat is focused on clothing and designer goods. So, what we're going to do now is also just want to quickly go into why reselling is so popular right now. And reselling is gaining popularity because the way people buy things has changed. Secondhand is no longer a fallback for not having enough money to buy the items you want. A lot of buyers, they're often looking first for when they're looking for something, they often turn to secondhand for their initial search because they want to be conscious of the environment. They're looking for a good value. And ultimately, maybe it's just something really unique that they can't find anywhere else. And that's the reason why this whole webinar, things you have lying around the house, marketplaces such as eBay are so vast that there's almost always a buyer for anything at the right price. And that's where the real opportunity comes in. You don't need to be a professional salesperson. It's really all about doing the right research and knowing how to really effectively describe things. And then as you start progressing, you learn on the fly. And that's pretty much what we're doing here. And just for context, in this picture, I have a person holding a black light on uranium glass. So this is about glassware from the 1930s, and it actually is made with traces of uranium. It's actually safe, and I've sold uranium glass early on, and this is one of my favorite things to sell. And so ultimately, if I ever go out to an estate sale, I know that there's glassware. I carry a black light so I can see if there's actual uranium glass that I can purchase. And moving to the next portion, we're now going to get into the demo and actually discuss how to put this all into practice. I'm just going to change my screen share and one more window. Perfect. So I see because a lot of the chat is focused on brand names and clothing, accessories, things like that. I'm going to start the webinar or start this section with how I would approach searching for something like a handbag or streetwear. I'm currently on the website called Hybid, and this is where I often go to purchase different pieces of items from estate sales without actually going in person. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for Coach handbag, and Hybid is going to have a bunch of these. And for purposes, so let's assume that you're selling a Coach handbag, for example, and you have one lying around. Right now, I don't have one lying around, so I'm just going to take this one here and I'm going to download the pictures. And I'm going to grab one more. So this normally I would actually have the item in person, but for purposes here, I'm just trying to figure out what are the most relevant pictures for the example. And I'll pull this example, this photo here. Okay, so now we have our item, and it is a Coach Chess crossbody handbag. And disclaimer that I'm not an expert in Coach at all. I've sold Coach before, a vintage Coach handbag a couple years ago, but right now I'm going into this kind of like from the lens of I'm looking to expand into handbags and I'm thinking of buying this off high bid. Is this going to be worth flipping? So the first thing that with reselling is we need to know the brand, the era, the specific details, the model, all of that. And we need to make sure that's actually real and that it's actually what we describe. So I have Gemini, and so we have a couple photos. And what I'm going to do is I have a prompt, and I will share these prompts after the webinar. So don't worry about writing them down or memorizing them. And the prompt is simply asking Gemini, I'm considering selling this item. Help me identify what it is, brand, era, specific model, or version, if applicable, and any details a buyer would care about. Also, tell me what condition issues I should look for that buyers in this category typically complain about. Because ultimately, with handbags, I may look at a handbag and see a scuff on it. And because I don't use handbags, I might think, oh, okay, I'll just list it anyway. But if a handbag buyer purchases that item, gets it, and then complains about the scuff, I'm going to accept that return and I'm going to be out the return shipping. So this is why with AI prompting, we're trying to have Gemini, we're bouncing ideas off it, and we're trying to get kind of like a second set of eyes almost. So you can see Gemini is pointing out the brand, model, materials, all that. And this is going to be essential information when you list on eBay because there are a lot, depending on the category that you're listing in, there's going to be a lot of details, such as eBay is going to ask for material, it's going to ask for color, it's going to ask for model. And the more detail that you provide, the more likely you are to make a sale. And you can see here now, Gemini is calling out the details that matter most. So serial code, original accessories, dimensions, and so on. And now it also is calling out possible flaws. So you can see like interior dust, corner wear, creasing, and so on. And the great thing about this is going back to these photos, like I'm on high bid right now, but let's say I'm at an estate sale and I see a Coach handbag and I pick it up, I snap some pictures on my phone, I go into the Gemini app and I ask the same prompt. I'm going to get the same information to help me make an informed decision. So then, now that we have our information on the item specifics and how to describe the item, the next question is going to be pricing. Because, of course, one of the biggest mistakes I've made as a reseller is just because something is old does not mean it's going to be worth a ton of money. And for Coach especially, the Coach is such a large brand that there's going to be high-end Coach, there's going to be bottom of the barrel Coach. And if you go on eBay and you have a great handbag, but you list it for $400 when it's only worth $100, you're not going to be the most successful. And that's why Gemini and AI tools in general can also be great for bouncing ideas off on pricing. So going back to Gemini, I now have just moving the Zoom toolbar. The next follow-up question we're going to ask is based on this item as likely condition, what pricing factors should I consider? Using sold listings, I'm just going to try adding in a nuance on marketplaces, not active ones. What's a realistic price range and what would make it sell at the higher versus lower end of that range? So we're not necessarily asking Gemini to tell me what is this Coach bag worth. We're asking it what are the factors to consider when pricing it. So you can see here, it says Coach outlet piece, which carries a lower price. There's also considering, you can see animal prints have a niche audience and things of all that. So then you also have like typical ranges. So the key thing here with Gemini and AI tools is you're not treating it like crystal ball. It's not like you just go to it and you say, what should I charge for this handbag? You're asking it what factors go into the price so then you can make that informed decision. And you can see here low end versus high end. That provides this clear table. And then Gemini also does provide suggestions on how to improve your listings. I see a couple of questions in the chat. I will get to them in the Q&A section. We're almost done with the demo. So the next thing I'm going to go over is preventing false returns or items not as described. And I do see the question in the chat is related to concerns of fraud and buyers saying that items are not what they purchased. So this actually is where we're going to dig a bit deeper into asking Gemini what would a buyer look for when they're purchasing this Coach handbag? So the next question is going to be, I'm reselling this item and need to photograph it myself. From the perspective of a professional product photographer, how should I photograph this to maximize buyer appeal? What angles, lighting, are you just quickly checking to see? Um, can everyone see the Gemini? Yes. Okay, perfect. Yes. So you should be seeing Gemini. I think Zoom has like a toggle or different tabs. So there may be two tabs open. And if you click the other tab, it should switch to Gemini. But going back to the demo, what we're doing with this prompt is So stepping back on what we accomplished right here, we went to Gemini and we asked it about what are the item specifics and condition factors to consider. We then focus on what to look for in price. So now what we're doing is we're focusing on how do we convey this accurately to a buyer? Because buyers on eBay, quite often, they will just look at photos and make the purchase, assuming it's what they want. And a good example of this is I once sold a single on cloud running shoe. So it literally was one shoe, not a pair of shoes. And I did my best to clearly show that in photographs and the listing. And I still had someone purchase it. And I had to message them and tell them, did you know this is one shoe? And they ended up canceling. So the reason I have this prompt here is because transparency is key when reselling, and you can describe all the flaws in a description in the listing, but ultimately pictures are everything. And now you can see Gemini, it's not just saying, here's the angles to take the photos with. It's actually saying, prepare the bag by stuffing it or and attaching all the accessories and all of these essential details. So I won't read all of these one by one, but you can see that overall, Gemini, when you have the right prompts, it's going to take you from not knowing anything. Like you may know the basics, like coaches, a good model. Like you may think this is a good model bag, but you don't know how to sell it. And now with those three prompts alone, you're pretty much ahead of 99% of other people. And now the other thing is now that we have the item, and let's say you're ready to list it, the next prompt I'm going to go over is how to optimize the listing. So in this case, it's a question of you have the great photos, so you took care of the photos and accurately depicting the item. Now we're going to focus on how to optimize the title for eBay, Depop, whatever it might be. And for this prompt, it is write a search optimized title for this item that matches how buyers actually search for it on resale platforms. And we'll actually just say eBay. And we're going to then say prioritize the most searchable terms, brand, item type, key attributes, and the reason I say to keep it under 80 characters is because that is currently the character limit on eBay. So we're just going to give this a couple moments, and you can see right away, this is the title. And just, I believe I mentioned this early in the start of the webinar, but I just want to call this out again. This workflow and these prompts are exactly how I use AI for my reselling. So before ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, I did a lot of this research by hand. And now it's just a matter of getting the hang of providing the product photos to Gemini. And then I just ask the associated prompts, whatever it might be. And then the final prompt I'm going to go over in this portion of the demo is, let's say you have this handbag listed, you optimize the title, you use the right keywords and so on, and it still doesn't sell. So the next prompt is going to be, I had this item listed, and let's just say it's been a month and there was no sale. And then we're going to ask it based on the title, description, and price I've given you. Actually, because we didn't set a price before, let's just say price point at I'm just going to say 400. And what are the most likely reasons it isn't selling, and what should I change first? So then you can see right away, Gemini, it's telling us 400 is way off the bat. And so you can see it calls out the price disconnect. And also it's saying other things like it actually reviewed the photos, and you can see it is highlighting dirty interior, and also there's then actionable insights. So drop to $90, vacuum interior, and all of that. So that's how I would approach listing an item when you're just starting out. And then the next thing I'm going to quickly touch on is Gemini Notebook, which is kind of like a resell. It's like an encyclopedia. So something I go over in Reselling Guide AI, we discuss Gemini as a way to pick up new knowledge. And Gemini Notebook is like having a library on reselling at your fingertips. And I'm just moving the chat window so I can see things a bit better. And this is an actual example of a Gemini notebook I have for my own reselling. And you can see I have a bunch of YouTube videos on bolos. Be on the lookout. And I also have a bunch of PDF files about clothing details. So let's say, for example, I'm I'm at the thrift store in Orlando, and I'm looking for Disney merchandise, which I know was mentioned in the chat earlier. So let's say I'm planning a trip to Orlando and want to know what is the best Disney merch keep an eye out for. And I'm also going to tell Gemini I'm only looking to spend up to, let's just say $50 for the right item. And now Gemini, going back here for just very quickly, Gemini is a tool like Google search engine. So it's going to be searching the entire internet. Gemini Notebook is almost like a custom Google. So I have all this information I compiled, and Gemini is now only searching these sources. I see in the chat, what do I keep in the PDFs? Is it general or focused? I can definitely open a PDF right now to show you. Um, Let me see if I can open it here. So this isn't the best example, but when I click on the source, for example, Gemini is showing the PDF, and you can see this is a guide to flannel shirts. And I have this is kind of like a reference for all types of brands, such as LL Bean. And you can see as all this information about LL Bean, Pendleton, and you can see it shows what tags to keep an eye out for, and Ironheart, and so on. And then jumping back to the chat here, I'm just going to minimize that for a moment. You can see this information, it's all pulled from my sources that I pre-vetted. And the great thing about Notebook LM is that it cites the exact source. So it's not just saying what video, it actually shows where in the video or where in the document. So you can see here like hundreds of bolos. And So I clicked the citation, and literally, instead of watching the entire video, I see that in the transcript the exact information on the Disney merchandise. And just for context, now if I'm stepping back to Gemini and I were to do the same exact prompt, let's just quickly see what pops up. And you can see now we're getting something a bit more generic, like Disney Parks ear headbands and trading pins. But trading pins, there's dozens of them, and it's not telling you like what ones to look for. And here you're actually getting those specific details. So I'm just going to switch back to my PowerPoint quickly. Perfect. So for the weekend plan, as you can see, it's extremely simple. And that's why I want to highlight with this webinar is with reselling, you don't want to overthink it. You just do it and you build momentum. You learn as you go, and then you achieve success. So pretty much Saturday morning, you pick your 1 to 3 items that you want to sell. Saturday or Sunday afternoon, clean them up, take the photos. And sorry, I misread the script, but Saturday morning, pick the items, 1 to 3 items that you're interested in selling. That afternoon, clean them up, take the photos. And then Sunday, work with the AI and determine the pricing, make sure that you have your details covered, and you're good to go. And then now, of course, the obligatory upsell. And what I just covered gets your first item evaluated and listed. What you don't have yet is a repeatable system, which is going into like Gemini Notebook and leveraging that as you grow your reselling empire. And also the question I did see in the chat, there was a question about how to handle fraud and customer service. That is something I touch on in Reselling Guide AI, but I will say that I've been selling on eBay since 2021. I have maybe only had issues with fraudulent buyers once a year. And this is on generally about 350 to 400 sales per year. So I've never had anything serious. And for the most part, it's really just a matter of you just accept it and you move on. But I think the key thing is with reselling, you can start out with a small value item. Like I personally would not sell an iPhone as my first item. It is very risky for me personally. But if you're selling a shirt for like 10, 20, $30, you test the waters, you build up your skill set, and then when you want to sell that iPhone, that $10,000 watch or whatever it might be, you don't just have your experience reselling, but you also have feedback from the buyers, which helps build credibility. So ultimately, you can see there's a promo code, my course, Reselling Guide AI. It's normally $99 and today it is $49. And the promo will be running for the next 2 weeks. And there's also a 30-day money back guarantee. So you can go through everything, have all the access to explore it, make sure that reselling is right for you. And ultimately, the course, 49 bucks, that's going to be help you avoid the cost of buyers returning something because you didn't describe it correctly. Or maybe you have inventory like great items, but they're sitting around because they aren't priced correctly. And as Albert mentioned, you can make the entire course back just from your first sale. So, also, even if you don't purchase the course, maybe it's just not the right time. I do provide reselling tips in the newsletter foundmoneyreselling.com. And that also will be where I will be sharing the prompts. We will be sharing the recording. And all that said, I'm done with everything from my end. I'm ready to take any questions from the audience. I see the first question I have is, will it be best to use Gemini over other platforms? That's a great question. And to be honest, the course material, some of it was done with ChatGPT, some of it was done with Gemini. And I personally use Claude for work, for developing things on the side. So I do focus on Gemini for part of the course because it integrates with Google Notebook or Gemini Notebook, but all the concepts discussed in the course can carry over to other tools. So if you're more comfortable with ChatGPT, you can use that instead. And the next question I see, so the notebook, the Gemini notebook they showed, was it put together by me? And when I enter a prompt in the notebook, does it only search the docs in there or does it expand to the internet? So that's a great question. And um, so I guess I'll just quickly jump back to my screen. One moment.
Well, I can do another question. JB asks, do you recommend setting up an LLC for the selling account, even if it's a random periodic casual selling?
I am not a legal expert, and ultimately, that's going to be a question you have to make on your own. I personally have preferred, I do reselling part time, and I am incorporated, but I just did that after moving to Nevada. Um, When I moved to Nevada, I did form the LLC because compared to California, it was a lot cheaper. But ultimately, you can resell either way. The key consideration I will say, however, putting aside the legal perspective, just speaking from seller experience, when you register as a business, you are subject to additional rules if you sell internationally versus if you are a consumer seller, at least for the US. So that is something to keep in mind. But either way, it's really more preference. And apart from $49, what else do I need to pay? Nothing else. It's all inclusive. And I'm just going to jump back to Gemini Notebook,
I have another
making
question. Let's
sure.
see. Michael
So the
asks, oh, go
yeah.
ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so the question was, how does Gemini Notebook select what to search for? And I'll just quickly demo right here. Right now, Gemini Notebook, if I type in the question, it's going to search everything selected. It's not going to search the internet for me. Now, if I do something like Hollister and I check this, I ask it, um, what Ralph Lauren, it's only searching Hollister, this Hollister PDF right now. So Gemini is most likely going to provide a less than ideal answer. And you can see Gemini clearly calls out doesn't contain any information. There is a web search functionality, but for the most value, I get doing my own sources. And I see the other question is what other sites do I use to sell? Um, I mainly sell on I sell on eBay. That's about 90% of my sales. And I also sell on Poshmark and Macari. Depop I have listed, and but ultimately Depop is more Gen Z. So that's the reason I tend to lean more on Poshmark, Macari, Depop. And I did see in the chat they were asking about the newsletter. So I have it up on the screen. Reselling Guide AI is the course, and foundmoneyreselling.com is the newsletter. And as mentioned earlier, we will be sending out the course, the webinar recording, and also we will be emailing the prompts that we went over in this webinar. And we also will include the promo code just in case you missed it.
Does the reselling course contain the notebook LM that you just shared?
I can definitely So one of the things about the course is that it's a living document. So it's
Hmm.
continuously growing. And the notebook LM, I right now what I presented is specifically to clothing, but I can provide a foundational bit of information on reselling foundations and provide that notebook in the course. And also, when you purchase the course, you do get support from me. If you have questions, suggestions for the course, or requests for lessons, I'm always open to those. I see in the chat there is a question about paying for ChatGPT and Gemini. To be honest, I personally would pay for ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. I think for $20 a month, it's really a great value. And if you, not at all tax advice, but if you are using it, for me personally, ChatGPT or Claude, it is a business expense, so you can deduct it from taxes because I use it for my reselling business. So honestly, I would say that ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, whatever model you use, figure out what works for you, what you like the most, and fit it into your workflow. That's really the best advice I can give. But for $20, I think that's really, for what you're getting, it is a great value.
Perfect. Uh, do you have any recommendations on light boxes or inexpensive solutions for whiteboards or lamps for the small stuff?
Yes. Honestly, I for the most part, what I do is I went to Michael's and I purchased painters' canvases. And a lot of the photographs that I take for clothing, I just put them on the canvas and snap a few photos. For light boxes, I'll drop in the chat the name of the brand that I tend to get lighting from. It's called, I think it's Newer, Newer. You can find your products on eBay, Amazon, they're a very popular brand and their price points are pretty good. I would say to start out, you don't really need to get a light box. You don't need fancy lighting. eBay does provide image editing tools to enhance the lighting. So I would say that my best advice is try taking some photos early on with your phone and then go when you're creating a listing on eBay, try out the background removal tool and the lighting enhancements. And it might be all you need. But definitely, if you do choose to scale and you're looking to really do lots of listings per day, per week, and so on, then a light box is worth the investment.
Love it. How many people are in the course, and are we all there together, or is it more like one-on-one self-paced?
The course is all one-on-one self-paced. Potentially later on down the road, I'm definitely open to having office hours, things of that sort. But right now, the course is it's similar to Udemy or LinkedIn Learning, where you watch the materials and it's all work as you go.
Love it. Um, how would I ensure that I would be selling goods? I don't really know what that question means. I feel like you're always selling goods. How about this one? Do you pay or recommend paying for a subscription for ChatGPT or Gemini? I believe there's a picture limit in the free version.
Oh, we did go through that.
Yeah, it is a tax deduction. So yes, do that.
Yes.
For reselling, is it best to find a niche or specialize or just find the opportunity wherever it may be? That's a good one.
Yeah, so I didn't go too much into my reselling journey because I wanted to have plenty of time for questions. But I would say that early on with eBay, I started out selling China, sporting goods, clothing, a ton of different things. And then eventually I niched into clothing because it's just a lot easier to ship and pack. Like you don't have to worry about a shirt breaking in shipping. So I would say the great thing about reselling is that you can make it work for you. So if you want to do everything, go ahead and do everything. If you want to niche down. But there's no right or wrong answer. It's really just what works for you.
Great. Do you recommend paying the percentage for promotion on eBay?
I can't speak to So, disclaimer again, I work for eBay, so I can't really tell people
The
what
answer
they
is
should
yes,
be
so you can
charging.
pay Charles his paycheck. No.
Personally, as a reseller on eBay, I do pay for promoted listings. But the reason for that is because clothing is very crowded and there's a lot of competition. But if I were selling something like model train cars where it's more niche and there's less competition, I might not do the promoted listings. But the great thing about going back to my point earlier about doing what works for you, you can choose to promote or not promote. And if you want to start out on eBay, I actually believe that for 90 days, when you create an account on eBay, there's a window of time where you need to wait to promote your listings. And then as you establish yourself, you gain the ability to promote. So I would say if you don't have the ability to promote, don't let that stop you. Create those listings, make the sales, and then as you grow, you can experiment with the different rates.
Great. Let's say final question here. Um, actually, there's a couple more coming in here. Uh, will you be adding cross-selling to your presentation in the future?
I can definitely do a webinar or a course on cross-selling. It is something I do myself, but it's not currently covered.
Yeah. Venus, where would you get products to sell?
Thrift stores, estate sales, I'll drop the link in the chat, estatesales.net.
Nice.
And there's also maxsold.com, hybid.com.
Yep, you can get them from your house.
And yes,
Yeah. Look at
I would
things you haven't
definitely,
looked used in a while. Yeah.
yeah, I would definitely recommend starting out with stuff you have in your home. And then once you figure out what works for you, what you're interested in, then you can check out the sites I just dropped in the chat.
Yep. Let's do one more question. I guess we can get into the weeds, but what scale or volume does one need to start to get discounted rates from shippers? Do you tend to just use eBay internal shipping labels or have a stamps.com account or have a business account with UPS, FedEx, etc.? Shipping I've seen is usually a bigger cost than I estimated.
Yes, that's definitely one of the challenges with getting started. And I'm guilty of making shipping mistakes myself. At a very high level, eBay labels apply to all purchases and you get the discounted rates versus the counter. I don't know the discount, but they do apply to pretty much most, if not all sales. So right off the bat, I would say definitely eBay labels is the way to go. There are there are services like Pirate Ship, which also offer discounts to customers, and that does not require minimum volume. But for me personally, I use eBay labels and Pirate Ship. Um, but and I've never dealt with USPS directly. So that's something the good thing is you don't need to worry about that to get the discount.
Yep. Okay, wonderful. We are at the top of the hour. Charles, promote resellingguide.ai one more time with the coupon code and how long the coupon code lies or lasts for, and then we'll go from there.
Oh, sure. Let me just, oh,
I think we
one
have a
moment.
lot of people who are interested in getting that side hustle started this weekend. So
Let me just put that chat promo up again.
perfect.
There we go.
Yeah. So A list bin 650, and they can go to resellingguide.ai.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll also be emailing the information also.
Yep. So A
And
list.
of course, I don't I guess I forgot to put my email, but let me drop that in the chat. Actually, it's Charles at foundmoneyreselling.com.
Nice.
And Albert, he did put my LinkedIn up there. So feel free to reach out with any follow up questions. I'll do my best to help out where I can.
And we'll be back with another webinar next month on September the 10th as well. So if you're looking to do this and you're still not sure, you can come back a few more times and learn all the insider details on this. Any final words, Charles, before I go ahead and conclude and shut the doors on tonight?
The only thing I'll call out is just do it.
Yep.
Once you don't overthink things, just take that item, get your first listing up, and go from there.
And I feel like that's a very universal axiom for
Mhm.
just doing things these days. So, with that said, thank you so much, Charles, for joining us today. It was very good to have you, and thank you all for joining us as well here in the chat and over helping us overcome our IT issues. We'll be sending out the recording in shortly here, and having you get started on your sales journey as you build a side hustle or expand your business further. Thank you all so much for your time today. We will talk to you soon. We will hope to see you soon and have a wonderful weekend. And if you have any wins for this business starting on Monday, let us know as well. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.